a test at 11:45 tomorrow. So
I'm glad you're going in tomorrow. Yeah.
this stuff is crazy. I'm hoping it's just a cold.
Yeah.
We all are.
Whoa! What the heck is that on our screen? Are you kidding me? Does he move?
Who, the dog or Tim?
Yeah. Hello, Tim.
How are you doing, sir?
Good. How are you?
I am good.
You have to excuse me. I'm going to take a bite of food.
Don't blame you.
It's been a crazy day, Tim. We have meetings pretty much all day. Some are standing meetings, and then we go right into council meetings. So we start out with a bang each week.
Andy, I hate to tell you this. It has been a year this year.
It has. It really has. You said it.
Where do you live at, Tim?
I am in Castle Rock.
Are they back to that orange level now, 25% capacity?
Yep, we are.
And I heard that restaurant that ignored everything and opened up on Mother's Day,
Uh-huh.
I heard they closed down. They're done.
Yeah, they are done. I think what they did is they had two places. They had one in the Springs and one in Castle Rock, and they closed the one in Castle Rock.
Yeah, we're not hearing anything good.
No.
We're going to go back to stay at home for a while to try to get this rise of cases come down a little bit.
Well, and that's where it's like I'm supposed to be back out traveling, and I think I have 2 or 3 more weeks and I'm supposed to be out, and it's starting to get okay. Should I be going out, or do we figure out how to go back the old way again? So.
Oh, I feel better now that I ate a little something.
Tim, you may not have met Chuck Harmon. He's a council member who came on last fall. Like that was after your presentation of the 2018 audit. So,
Okay.
Tim, good to see you.
Good to see you.
And you better watch it, Tim. Chuck's going to know if you made an error in that.
Well, I've been known to find a few. Yeah.
If you find something, Chuck, just let me know.
You got it. You got it. Sorry, we have to meet this way.
I was going to say, considering I have 2 board meetings tonight, this is actually the best way for me to cover them both. So.
Wow. Yeah.
That is definitely easier way to make 3 meetings in a day for sure.
I think I have 6 deliveries this week that I've got to cover. So yes, it's a lot less driving time.
There are a lot fewer cars on the road. That's been one of the silver linings to all this. That's been a good thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just want the sales tax that went with those cars, though.
There you go. There you go. Although it's been hard to figure out our sales tax, it's been up since the pandemic started. It's been up some months and down other months. It's just
Okay.
a head scratcher. Yeah. It has
Overall up, or
we're down. Overall, we're going to be down a little bit.
Okay.
I'd say 5 to 10% in that
Okay.
range. We had a good report from the last month. You know, we lagged two months behind with the state reporting, but September was an up month. So yeah, it makes it hard to budget, hard to predict.
right? Yeah.
And Tim, one of our other council members on, Jim Clark, he is came on last fall as well, so you may not know Jim Clark, Councilmember Jim Clark.
Hi, Jim. Nice to meet you.
Tim's our
You too,
auditor.
sir. Good
Jim.
evening.
You know John Curtis. John's been around for a little while. And Arthur Cacavelli as well.
Hello, everybody.
Tim Mayberry, our auditor. So Art
Hi,
came on
Tim.
last fall.
Nice to meet you. Mayberry, huh? My kids just have that program on from the Mayberries right now.
Yeah, I've never heard that one.
I'm sure you didn't, but I mean, it's on my TV right now. That's the only reason I bring it up. It's one of those stations that show the old programs.
Uh-huh.
So.
Hi, Nina, Lorraine,
One,
how are y'all?
thanks.
All right, let's see, we're missing Bob and Scott. Bob and Scott, is that all we're missing? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Judge, are you Rachel G today?
Rachel is my 18-year-old daughter, and this involves electronics. So yes, I'm Rachel. Yes.
Let them not alone.
You don't know how to change? Oh, you better not change it. She'll get mad. I know. Oh, sorry, Judge Goodby. You can see you now.
Oh, there you are.
I was here. I was taking a bite of food. I didn't want everybody to see me chomping. To get a bite. I've been in meetings all week, all morning, all day. All right. The only one we're missing is Bob. We're in work session, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for being here tonight. Nina, Lorraine, Judge Goodby. Oh, he did change. Looky there. If we haven't introduced, we've got Tim Mayberry with us tonight. His firm is the one, and Tim takes care of our audit. He's been working, he worked with Sandy up in the till the time we lost her. And then we brought Lorraine in to help us complete that audit and get through it so that they could present it to the city. So welcome, Tim. So real quick, if any council has not met our judge, our municipal judge, it's Michael Goodby. He's been with us, we're what, 6 or, oh, COVID, you're probably almost a year now.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. How time flies when you don't get to see everybody. Judge Goodby's done an excellent job of stepping in for our past municipal judge that was with us for over 20 years. And he stepped right in and filled the shoes, and we're moving along. So with that, Judge Goodby, you want to just kind of address us, and we got your little layout in our packet, so we do have that to go by. So take it away.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And nice to meet everyone. I'm sorry if we haven't met before that we have to meet under these circumstances electronically. I've submitted this report, and I don't know what historically you guys have received, but it's important to me that you get the kind of information that you want. And so when we're all done, please feel free to let me know if there's information that you want that I didn't include, so that I can modify it for next year. And if you don't want the report, it's fine to tell me we don't want your stinking report. We have other stuff that we need to read. I'll just hit on some of the highlights. I had one court session before COVID hit, so I'm not responsible for it. It's just bad timing. So COVID hit, and we had a 2-month break, and then I've been back in court since then. Your court staff, Kelsey and Wonder and Diane, kind of put together a plan for bringing folks into the city hall in a safe way with limited numbers, with distancing. And so we've been running court since then. We don't have any chairs that they can touch, and we don't have a podium that they touch. And so we've been able to effectively run the court, even though COVID's here. I was a district judge for 11 years. And before that, I was elected DA. So I worked with a lot of different staff. You have a strong staff there. I love working with Kelsey and Andy and your city prosecutor. She can be a little spicy sometimes, but she's very fair. And she's what's that?
It's because she's from Texas.
It's about or Tennessee or one of those anyway. But she's
somewhere where they have a draw. I don't know.
That's right. She's I would just report. I like working with your staff. One of my mantras was it's my privilege to serve the public, not the public's privilege to be served by me. And I think your staff, I think in their daily interactions with the public, I think that they kind of live that out. I've also kind of kept an eye on the tickets that we receive from the police department, in case some tickets that I feel maybe should be going to county court or district court. I'm happy to report I haven't really seen any of that. I think your chief has a good sense of which kind of charges need to come to your courts and which kind of charges need to go to the state courts. The officers have been gracious and respectful to me. It's been good. Some of the highlights I wrote down for the past year, I've been serving as a peer mentor for a young judge up in the mountains. I was one of about a dozen state judges retired and otherwise asked to do that by state judicial. And I also was invited back to serve as a judge mentor and a group facilitator at the National Judicial College, which is in Reno, Nevada, on the campus there. It's the third time I've done that. It's great. It's a 9-day course, except for this time it was all on computer in my basement, so it wasn't so great. And I'll just finish by saying I appreciate the opportunity to get in front of you guys. Be happy to try to answer any questions that you might have. I'm going to keep stats running forward. So each year I'm just going to add to the stats that I have to give you a sense of where the caseload is to the extent that, I'm able to do that. I feel really fortunate to have a chance to serve your community. Some of you may know I was the elected DA up there in the 90s in the 5th JD. So I kind of really cut my teeth in criminal justice up there. I love your communities and I appreciate the opportunity to serve Idaho Springs.
All right. Thanks, Judge Goodby. Does counsel, do you have any questions for a judge or some clarification or?
Just have a comment. I thought your report was great, and I really do appreciate the personal angle too. I think that's really valuable.
Oh, thanks.
So anyway, no, this was a great report, and we're all so separated right now. We kind of lose track of what everybody's doing, and so I just want to let you know I appreciate it. Also, Tom Elliott from Georgetown said to say hi to you.
Oh, nice of him. That's excellent. I struggled with whether or not to put the personal stuff in there, but I thought, you know what, we're in the process at this point of getting to know each other, and so I thought, I'll tell you stuff that's going on in my life. I love playing the horn, and the horn's back in my life, and it's improved my quality of life. And so I wanted to put that in there, and I'm proud of my kids and my wife. And so, yeah, I thought I'd throw that in there. I'm not sure. I did it for the city council in Golden. I'm not sure it was received in the same way by all of them, but hey, I'll keep you updated on the personal stuff that's going on.
That's great. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
thank you.
I as well like that. It's nice to know your background and kind of what you're dealing with, a high school kid. I'm in the same boat, so I can relate to some of the things you go through.
Yeah.
The other thing,
I'd like to add too.
Just
go ahead.
Go ahead, Jim.
I would like to add too, Your Honor, that just what Bob said. Cool, awesome report here, and I think it's only fair that since you included this, because you did respectfully ask for the opportunity to continue serving. And so did you bring the horn? I think that we need to hear it. So let's get going here.
Well, I'll tell you what. If you have an annual Christmas thing, I'll bring my horn up and I'll play a Christmas tune for you. How's that?
Well, unfortunately, we're not going to get to have our Christmas party, but we would have brought you in and played the Carnival Entertainment. Yeah.
We'll take a rain check.
Well, you know,
There we go.
there's
So
something funny. I
one
was-
thing, Judge, real
ahead.
quick, you know that the council passed an ordinance last week. Were you familiar with that? Okay. Were
Yes.
you good
Yes,
with
sir.
that? Just from your position, you good with that, bringing these enforcement citations into Muni Court?
Yes, and you know, the bottom line is that the council, mayor and the council decides whether or not, whether or not to pass these ordinances. I think it's an appropriate ordinance and I don't have any problem enforcing it. You know, I think it's important to give people notice and let them know that we're serious about it. But yeah, Mayor, I don't have any issue. And that's, you know, I don't want to step on your terrain. That you guys decide what the ordinances are and then I enforce them. But if you're asking me if I have an issue with it, I don't at all.
Well, the big thing is we knew that the bandwidth at the county and the enforcement mechanism that they have would never cover all of the communities. And we were a little concerned with the increasing load of the county and the district attorney's office, whether these would even be looked at or just being thrown out. We think it's important enough, especially now that we're back in level orange of this being, making sure that they're complying with the rules. We want to have a better handle on it. And I think that our community feels better and safer about it now that they know that we've got somebody out there taking a look at it and making sure that we're enforcing it. So, all right, good.
I do have
Anything
one
else
thing to
for
say, please, Arthur. I just wanted to thank the judge for his cover letter and his report. I just thought it was so professional and gave us an eye into his professionality and how he judges and all that. And I just thought how great that was and very respectful of it. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your comments on it.
You're welcome. Just remember my face if I'm ever in front of you.
Okay, I'll try. Oh, well.
All right. Thanks again.
I'll
that's
get out of
good.
here. You know, everybody have a good and safe Thanksgiving. And again, I love working with Idaho Springs. I really consider it a privilege. You guys have a good Thanksgiving. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you. You as well.
All right, we're going to move down now to as I introduced our firm that does our audit for us. We've got Tim Maybeer with us, and he's going to walk through. Usually, he does pretty quick. Walks through the highlights, gives us kind of like the executive report, and then opens it up for questions for us. So, Tim, take it over.
All right, and I'm not sure exactly how brief this one will be as opposed to some of those in the past, but I'll try, like I said, try and hit the highlights, and then I know Lorraine tends to follow up with me or follow after me and highlight anything that I forgot to bring up. 2020 obviously has been a challenging year. 2019 was also a little bit of a challenging year for the financial activities, not necessarily how you did financially, but the record keeping wasn't quite as strong as what we've seen in the past. And we know that there's reasons for that, and we're not necessarily going to discount or say that this is what we had issues with. But the books were not quite as clean as what we've had in the past, and that was to be somewhat expected. We had started talking, I think, Andy, last fall, trying to go through and trying to make the audit go a little bit smoother for 2019, trying to identify some issues that potentially staff could look at before we came out and started going through things. About the time we were supposed to come out is when everything got shut down. So that face-to-face time when we could go through and get questions asked and answered relatively quickly did not work. One of the big things we ran across, and this actually fell back into probably February 19 of when these things started, was we had identified some issues with your accounts payable postings and knew that accounts payable hadn't been flowing through the system correctly. Identified that, but were unable to have the city help us out trying to resolve that issue. That set us back a lot. I do not want to compare your check register to your general ledger ever again. We went through multiple passes, multiple people with the office just trying to get through and trying to figure out what was not working. Fortunately, Lorraine was able to come in at the back end and figure out that there were some posting errors or posting issues that had not been updated through the general ledger. Once we got there, then that resolved a bunch of those issues. But probably the biggest thing is you have a lot of projects going on, and you've had a lot of projects going on. It takes a little bit more work to keep up with those, or it stretches you a little bit. And unfortunately, health concerns were not allowing you to stretch last year. So some of those things really didn't, you weren't able to keep up on things quite the way that you were hoping to keep up with. Again, we really only have one big concern, and Andy's fully aware of where I'm going to go with that. So I'm going to highlight the good points to start off with, and I'm not going to go through a lot of the detail of what's in the audit. Hopefully, and I'm not sure exactly where Lorraine's at as far as getting things caught up, hopefully getting closer. I know you're working on the budget tonight, so it's got to be getting a little bit there. I'm just going to highlight, this is the income statement on page 8 of the financial statements. Your general fund was down $154,000. You have $2.3 million carry forward in there. That's almost a year's worth of carry forward in general fund. So absolutely no issues there that we have concerns with. Ramp fund, you still have just under $800,000 sitting there. So depending upon what projects you've got, and we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, is like, what do you do with that remaining 800,000? How much do you want to keep there for future maintenance and upkeep versus do you have continuing projects to do? I'm going to skip over sales tax improvement temporarily. Your 1% street sales tax fund, you still had $2.4 million. I can't remember exactly how much project you had left, but if I remember right, the projects that you had outlined were able to be covered with that, and then you were looking to see how much further you could stretch that. Conservation trust is just minor, but again, you really didn't do anything in that fund. You just added to it, so you have about $60,000 sitting there. Now, the bugaboo is the sewer project and the loans that you're required to do related to the sewer project. And we've kind of talked about this off and on for the past year, and I'm not sure exactly, Andy, where you've come out. But the big concern is what originally was planned as far as what the city's match was and whether or not it would actually end up being this is all the city is going to have to kick in, or is there more money that is going to be required and that match is going to go up? For last year, or over the past 2 years, you have purchased the land for the sewer plant and as well as the public works facility out of your sales tax improvement fund. Sewer does have to pay for that. They're half of it. So over the past 2 years, we have booked half of that cost back as an advance from sales tax to sewer for their portion of the land purchase. For 2018, we also had an additional cash advance in order to try and cover some of the additional costs that were there. One of the feedback things that we got from the 2018 audit from Colorado Water Resource and Power Development was they wanted to make sure that your cash was not negative at the end of 2019. We had to be at least break even. That additional amount took another $2 million loan this year to get your cash broke even in wastewater. So you've got a significant amounts of loan from capital improvement fund or from sales tax improvement back over to the wastewater fund. Now going over to the wastewater fund, just to show you what I'm talking about, this is on page 10. The top line is your cash balance. We had to keep your restricted cash, which is the 3-month O&M reserve that you have to have. We have to keep that funded. So the second line down is $302,000. The top line is your unrestricted cash. And if you look at the very right-hand column where you see we have a negative 346,000 in 2018, that's what caused Colorado Water Resource and Power Development to have a little bit of heartburn for the 2018 audit. So for 2019, we had to make sure that that was zero. So if you look, we transferred in just enough to make sure that the cash in water and wastewater nets to zero. Now, and this is a continuation of the discussion that we had last year, a little bit more of a caution from us this year. Last year in 2018, we knew the cash was negative and we knew that potentially that the capital side of sewer was negative. But because of timing issues and how we were trying to structure your projects and your federal loans versus your state loans versus making sure that you were in compliance with Tabor, because you were both getting a loan in 2019, plus you had an additional loan, or sorry, I'm back, a loan in 2000. Am I doing that right, Andy? Or did you get the second loan 2020? I think you got the second loan this spring. Yeah. So for 2019, we got everything through, but for 2020, we may have had to make sure that your 2019 was Tabor compliant. So again, following on with what we talked about last year, part of the dilemma was making sure that you did not have too much state money that was going to create an issue with, again, Colorado Water Resource, where if the sewer fund did not comply or the combined water sewer fund did not comply with Tabor, they would not be able to give you the loan. So structuring throughout the year, you were trying to not draw any more money than you had to, but by the same token, by not drawing funds, by not drawing grant funds, by not drawing loan funds, you had a significant cash shortfall, which is what required the $2 million loan internally. So, and this is where I might have you join in, Andy and Lorraine. Subsequent to the end of the year, we had that significant loan. Have you been able to draw a lot of cash back? I'll point out one more thing. If you go down in the receivables, there's a cash with fiscal agent line. That cash with fiscal agent is $2.5 million, $2,540,000. That consists of the remaining loan proceeds from Colorado Water Resource, plus you had two $300,000 loans also from the state, which you had drawn most of the one, you really hadn't drawn much on the other. That also was a timing issue because those are forgivable loans. So you had $600,000 worth of loans, they were going to get forgiven. But there at the very end, we were trying to figure out, okay, were they forgiven in 2019, which then creates a Tabor issue? Were they forgiven in 2020, which then were okay? You had a lot of things related to this sewer project that just made it really complicated to try and get your numbers to flow through again, to make sure that Water Resource and Power Development was okay, that you could still get your loan, but it did not necessarily put you in a good place financially at the end of 2019 in the sewer fund. Because again, the number right below that, this is the internal balance. You have now $2.7 million worth of loans in the wastewater fund from other funds. So that's where, again, now, if you can, Andy and Lorraine, can you give them an update as far as where you're at now financially? Because we're 11 months after the end of the year, 10 months after the end of the year. Things have changed significantly. I'm just giving you this presentation of here's where we were at as of 12/31, knowing full well we were trying to draw money as quickly as possible after the end of the year. And where are you at now? And do you have a better update as far as whether or not the original match that you were planning on putting into the project is still on track, that's all you're going to have to put in, or is the city going to have to kick in more and therefore some of these loans are just not going to be able to be repaid right away?
I could take a little, but I think Andy may be better, but I know that the city has been able to draw down considerable amounts of the cash with fiscal agent. And I believe there was one for over 900,000 in the past week.
Andy, is that going to get you backhaul, and what's your time frame or potential time frame as far as being able to get some of these paid back? I know, didn't we set up the original loan as a 10-year loan or a 20-year loan, the one from 2018, and we didn't have it formalized for the 2019 $2 million plus loan, but we basically were setting it up as an interest-free loan between the funds, with we're going to pay it back as quickly as we can. Do you have a better idea, Andy, as far as when you're going to be able to start making payments on that?
Well, one of the things I think we are going to need to do, Tim, now that the audit is done for 19, I think you and I and Lorraine will need to get together to review this and figure out, where we're headed. We do have the almost $1 million reimbursement, through the loan that's probably in our account now, and then we've got the funding all in place for project 2. So I think the question is, I think what you're asking is, will there be any remaining? And I think that I think we would need to have more discussion on.
Okay. I was going to say, other than that, I mean, that truly is the biggest concern. I mean, some of the issues that we had, again, were you had a lot going on, and health-wise, things just were not working as well on your end as we're aware. One of the big things is Lorraine is very familiar with Cassell and is able to help fix some of those things that we were identifying. We had some back and forth as far as like just some cash differences that we had or bank rec issues that we had and we were trying to fix. And I think, Lorraine, for the most part, you were able to see what we were seeing, and most of those have been resolved at this point. It's just a matter of, there was just a lot in 2019, and with everything going on in 2020, it was difficult getting everything wrapped up and put together. But like I said, our biggest issue or our biggest concern last year, we kind of not necessarily minimized it, but we knew that we were waiting on reimbursements, and we were trying to schedule the timing. I guess I was a little surprised, and I think Andy was a little surprised too, as far as how much of that loan or how much loan we actually had to do with sales tax to get that cash netting to zero. But again, that's something Colorado Water Resource and Power Development required was, hey, water and sewer has to meet the Tabor requirement, and water and sewer has to be able to fund or have enough cash in the bank to fund the restricted 3-month O&M reserve. And essentially what they saw last year is, hey, yeah, you restricted cash, but for 2018 is you restricted cash, but then that just created negative cash, and we can't have that. So again, I think your projects are slowly, or I think your projects are slowly coming to an end, and you won't have quite as much going on. But yeah, we definitely want to see where you're at, and maybe try and come up with some projections of when we can start paying back some of those loans. It's not necessarily, and what we were trying to do, and these are discussions that we've been having all the way through the process, was we did not want to necessarily take money away from a fund that had projects on the books that you were planning on using it right away. But by the same token, you will need to access those funds at some point, and we just want to figure out when will that money be available so that you can do more things. Any questions? Chuck, go ahead and start pointing out stuff, by all means.
I'm loving it.
So I will tell you that we do have we have about $3 million remaining in grants and loans to receive, to have on the loan is reimbursable. So we have to incur the expense. Part of the challenge is incur the expense and then apply to get reimbursed under our $3 million loan through the Power and Water Authority. And then we have the $1 million DOLA grant. That's also a reimbursement. So, but we still have for project 2, we have $3 million in reimbursements, either through the grant or the loan, that will be coming back. And that project will probably be wrapping up end of next year or early 22.
All right, council, do we have any other questions you'd like clarified? So just real quick, Lorraine, moving into 2022, we've talked that we had a pretty good financial position. And do you see that we're kind of flattening out? We're still in good shape, and with these reimbursements coming in, going into 2021, we're going to be fine.
Yes, Mayor. As I mentioned each time we talked about the budget, you are in pretty good financial position for most of your funds, with the wastewater fund being the one that's the question mark. And you've got a good plan with getting these grants and loans. It's the cash flow is an issue, and I think you're fortunate to have an auditor like Tim, who is so helpful as far as helping the town show that it did comply with Tabor and that it did comply with requirements, you know, of the Water and Power Authority as well. So I am optimistic that as long as you stay on budget with that project and continue to put in your draw requests in a timely manner, that you'll be able to turn that around. You're also fortunate that you do have that fund that is sitting there with money that can make that kind of an advance. A lot of cities and towns wouldn't be in that position. So when you do have to pay up front and then request reimbursement, it can be a problem sometimes. So I'm optimistic about it. Be happy to go through the rest of the audit report too, and kind of relate it to how your budget is sitting at this point. Unless Tim has anything else, or you have anything more for him.
Does anybody else have any questions for Tim? All right. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for getting us, you know, as you mentioned a couple of times, we know that unfortunately with Sandy over the last couple of years, you know, in and out, active, and you know, then it's not there, and then reactivate. Yeah, it was a rough couple of years for all of us, not just Sandy, because we were supporting Sandy and with Sandy all the time. So, all right.
Hey, thank you, Tim.
Yeah, I would just like to underscore that it was a particularly challenging year on so many fronts, but it was particularly with the audit and getting the records together. I mean, Tim stuck with it and persevered through it. I'm very thankful that we have Lorraine on board as well. She came in at a good time to help with trying to wrap up the financial records that were needed for the audit this summer. And Lorraine, thank you. And Tim, thank you for bearing with us through this whole process. It was a long audit year. But
and just to reiterate, and just so you guys are aware, on top of all of a sudden you were without a finance director, Andy kind of stepped up to the plate, and we asked him for stuff, and he became your finance director for a while. And it's, hey, Andy, we're still looking for these invoices and that.
That's enough. Stop right there.
But I do appreciate everybody's effort, because again, it was a challenge, and it took all of us to put stuff together and pull it together and still like we said, and still meet all the requirements for externally as far as what everybody was looking for. So.
And we also have Kelsey and Wonder to thank, because I know that they had to step into those positions and kind of keep us afloat for day-to-day operation. So that was a huge help as well.
Very true.
Right. We're going to move on.
Hey,
we want to get out of here tonight.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Have a good evening.
All right, council, we're going to move down to inclusionary housing ordinance.
Mayor?
Yes.
I think Lorraine might have some comments as well. Is that right, Lorraine?
Oh, I'm sorry, Lorraine. Go right ahead.
I do, and I don't want to keep you, but I do like to bring to your attention a few things in the financial report, because as I've mentioned before, you are legally the fiduciaries of the city and have a responsibility to overlook the finances. And so I'd like to kind of walk through parts of the audit report with you, so that if you wish, you can then put it on your shelf and never look at it again and feel like you've satisfied those obligations of knowing how the year ended. Or if you want to, you can delve into it more later, either with Andy or even Tim or myself, to answer any further questions. So I would just like to start on with the management's discussion and analysis. It starts on page M1 and it comes after the auditor's letter. And of course, thankfully, you did receive a clean opinion from the auditor, which is always a wonderful thing to get. But as far as the management's discussion and analysis, this is supposed to show a reader, and usually that's an analyst who is looking whether to give your city credit or not, or to rate some bonds you might issue. Typically, not many other people do read this, but you may want to read it because it gives you a lot of good information about how the city is set up and what the finances mean. And some of the things that I've talked to you about during the budget process about the different types of funds and how they're measuring different types of operations are reiterated here. So if you ever have a question about that or want to delve into it more, or just remind yourself about what we were discussing, this management discussion and analysis is a place you could go. So this starts with the financial highlights, and it does show that you had some good results of financial activity during the year. And it highlights some really good things that you can tout. That interfund loan is a problem area, but you have a lot of, we think that's going to be resolved, and you had a lot of highlights during the year of the net position increasing by $3 million. So that in itself is a very good thing. The city's net position was $46 million. If anyone asks you what's the city worth, that's the answer, $46 million. If you look at the governmental funds, and those are the ones that we've talked about in the budget where you're just tracking money in, money out, are you levying enough taxes to keep performing the duties you need to. Those governmental funds had combined ending fund balances of over 10 million. And it did go down from by 5.8, but again, that's because you spent down project funds in the RAMP fund and in the other revenue funds that were intended to be spent down to perform projects. So, and your water and wastewater funds position did go up, even though you have that loan that has to be paid back. So those are good highlights there on the beginning of this report. Next part talks about the government-wide financial statements, and under it, it tells you there's these two statements, net position and activities. And when we've talked in the budget process about some funds just measure the cash in and cash out, and other ones are looking at the whole capital plant and the pipes to ground and everything like that. These two statements make everything, throw everything all together and show for the whole city what your net position is. And it doesn't divvy it up by funds, it just divvies it up by business versus general versus governmental type activities. So that's kind of a synopsis there of the different funds that we've talked about and how they're measured and what they do. And going on the next page, it talks about those special revenue funds, and it talks about the proprietary funds, which are your two utilities that are supposed to be run like a business where you can measure your net income and your total net worth. And then you have those two little fiduciary funds that are funds that the city is in charge of that are really for the benefit of other parties. When you go to M3, it encapsulates those two statements of net position. And here's where it shows you for both years, whether you went up or down and went from total in the bottom right-hand corner of 43 million in 2018 to 46 million in 2019. And it shows you in each of those types of funds what your bottom line was. But the fourth line up from the bottom of that table is net investment in capital assets. And you see that of that 46,376,000 that's in the total column for 2019, the vast majority of it is in capital asset, but non-spendable. And you've got another 10 million that can be spent. Some of it's restricted for certain uses and others is unrestricted. So it really shows you the value of the buildings and the infrastructure and the streets and parks, et cetera, that you have. So going up onto the next page, it shows you the changes in that position on page M4. It tells you, well, how did we go up by 3 million? And it shows you, well, we had these revenues coming in, those expenses going out. And therefore the increase in that position, which is the third line up from the bottom, totaled $3,032,000 for the year. Most of that was in those governmental funds, $2,003,000, and the $6,086,000 in the water and wastewater. So this report, I'll just look at two other things on here, which is the tables, the charts that are on page M5 and M6. So on M5, it shows you for those governmental activities, they're the ones like police and the street maintenance, et cetera, that we get most of the revenues are from taxes. So that big light blue part on the left, 42.6% of your revenues are from taxes. The big light green part, the 38.7, is from capital grants and intergovernmental revenues. So very little from charges for services in governmental activities. And when you look at the bar graph on the bottom, it compares the program revenues, which would be for some fees or fines, are so small compared to what the expenses are for providing general government, public safety, public works, and parks and recreation. And when you go to the next page, it talks about the business type activities, and it's the opposite situation here. The big blue part of the circle on page M6 is from fees for services, your utility bills that finance your water and wastewater operations, and another 20%, sorry, from capital grants and contributions. So these look good. You do show your revenues exceeding your expenditures in both of those funds. It's a cash flow problem that you're working on, and is very important as well. So I'm going to leave the MD&A, the management discussion and analysis, and you can look at it more if you're interested. It does talk a bit more about the funds and the fund types, but generally that's an overview of where you are with the city finances. The next section that starts having table after table and statement after statement are the raw numbers, and Tim went through some of these with you. Those first two statements are those entity-wide statements where you've got the governmental combined in there with the business type. But after those 2 pages, everything is based on funds after that. And that's what you look at mostly when you're looking at your budget. So looking at page 10, I think, 9. Oh, I'm sorry, 6. Hard to see on my screen. You've got the balance sheet for each of those fund types. And here you show as internal balances under the sales tax improvement fund. See that number, the $2,712,000, most of which is an internal balance due from the wastewater fund. So we saw the negative number on the wastewater fund when Tim was speaking, but here you see it is an asset of the sales tax improvement fund that needs to be paid back. Each of these fund balances in these general funds was good, and that's what we have concentrated on in the budget process, whether they're going up or down, whether we know the reason for it, and whether that's okay with us. And moving on, then there's some other schedules that reconcile these schedules back to those entity-wide statements. But unless you're really interested in that type of accounting, you could just pretty much stick to the ones on page for the governmental funds. Stick to the ones on page 8 that Tim started with. That show those fund balances going across the bottom for all of your governmental funds, and they're all in the black. And they're all pretty similar to what we have in the proposed budget as the starting amount for 2020. And so your numbers flowing forward in the budget are based on these numbers here on this page 8. Those bottom line numbers, fund balance ending, I've mentioned before, are the last real numbers in your budget book, because everything else is a forecast for how 2020 is going to end and what 2021 is going to bring. So these are solid numbers to begin that forecast. Similar information files for your proprietary funds, the ones run like businesses, And Tim focused on those, especially the wastewater fund with that internal balance that needs to be paid back. But I just want to skip forward to the notes to the financial statements and give you a little bit of information that's there so that you're aware of what's included there. They begin on page 15. And there's some general information about the city, which can be helpful at times. If you get a student or someone who calls you and wants general background information, you can refer them to this. It tells you who your reporting entity is, and that means in your case, it's just the city. Sometimes there's a question, well, is this housing authority part of the city or is some other library part of your city? No, this is our reporting entity right here, what you see in this book. And then it talks about these government-wide and fund financial statements that we just went through. Getting over to the general fund, it tells you what types of principal expenditures are in it. For the bottom of page 16, police protection, public works, parks and recreation, city administration. And then it tells you what these other funds are. You've got 2 special revenue funds where you have to use the revenues for designated purposes per law or some other binding agreement. And you've got some capital project funds. So we've got your 1% street sales tax showing as a special revenue fund because of the election attached to that, which restricted those monies. We've got your sales tax capital improvement fund as a capital project fund, since it's more by your determination that that's how those sales taxes will be used for that fund. You also have the water and sewer. We'll just skip forward to show you that there's some other information here about how our property tax is collected. What do you count for your inventory? What do you include as a capital asset? Looking at page 19, what period of time do you depreciate those assets over? How do you deal with your unpaid leave and all that money you would have to pay out if everybody quit on the same day? You know, that all these types of things are answered in your financial statements. When you get to page 22, there's some information about your budget process and what is required of you in that regard. And in this financial statement, budget to actual schedules appear because they are required to be reported on. Your total cash and investments and what you're able to invest in is listed here. On page 23, if anyone asks you, I like to say, why don't somebody will come up and say, why don't you invest in the stock market when it's really roaring? And you can say, we're limited to these types of investments. We have to follow that. So it tells you how credit worthy you are, what your credit risk is, who you invest with, what cash you have that's restricted, why you can't spend this or that for another purpose, what's required from your bonds and agreements. Page 24 shows your capital assets by category and what you added or deleted during the year for both the governmental and the business type assets. And then page 26 gets down to these internal balances and transfers. And this is something you can reference when you think back to what Tim was discussing with the interfund advances. You have a couple different types of interfund transactions that went on during 2019. Some were routine transfers where one fund gives another fund money that's never coming back. That's a transfer. It's a transfer of equity. But the advances are like short-term or in some instances longer-term loans, where one fund is advancing some money to another and it does need to come back. And these 4 advances on the bottom of this schedule on page 26 detail that $2,700,000 figure that's shown on those financial statements that we've already discussed. Some of it was back from 2005, and then the 2 big event and a larger advance in 2018 and then the whopper in 2019 for wastewater fund. The next part details your long-term debt. And if anyone asks you, how much do you owe? When are you paying back these bonds? Why did you borrow that money? These pages will tell you exactly what they need to know or what you want to know. about when you issued it, how long the term is, what the interest rate is, and what the debt service to maturity schedule is for each and every issue of debt that you have. And you'll see that on page 27 is the business type activities, and you've got several issues there that come to about $7.5 million at the end of the year, standing debt for the advancement of your water and wastewater utilities. I'm going to skip through the rest of that, but as you page through, you'll see many paragraphs of information there. There's also a big note on your retirement plans and eligibility, and your police department's defined benefit plan. And this talks about the FPPA, which is where you have your money and how it works and what the risk is and what the risk is to the city as being part of it, and fully outlines more than anyone would ever want to know, I think, about their retirement system. And at the end of these statements, there's some information about risk and budget, and then it moves into some generally additional information from what was in front of the book. These statements, those notes kind of complete the basic financial statements, but there's required supplementary information and some just optional, not required supplementary information that follows, and most of it's about budgets. So right here in beginning, can't see the page number, on page 41 is your general fund, and it goes by category. So there's pretty detailed information here about what your original and final budgets were. There was a supplemental, there'll be a separate column that shows that, and where you ended up and whether you were varied to the good or to the bad from what your budget was. And the rest of the book goes similarly through each of the other funds, what the budget was, what your actual amounts were, and where you ended up. At the back of the book is the similar budgetary information for the water and wastewater funds. If you look at page 47, you'll see that water fund. And just one last mention of the fact that these funds are shown differently than your governmental funds because of them being run like businesses. So at the bottom of the actual column, you'll see the change in net position budget basis is one number, it's minus 341,000. But then change in net position gap basis, which is the generally accepted accounting principles basis, is 132,000. So things like debt service and depreciation and capital outlay are treated differently, as we've discussed. So that's why those last two schedules are there. If you have an interest in those differences, it helps to explain those. And the very end of the book is just a required report for the state and federal showing the use of highway user funds. I went fast and covered a lot, but I just wanted you to have the full fiduciary view of where your financial statements were at year end, so that you can rest easy that we know where they are and they're in pretty good shape, or you can delve into them further if you wish.
Anybody have any questions?
Just a comment. I really appreciate Lorraine's descriptions. Every time you're finished, I understand more than I did at the beginning, and I appreciate that a lot. That doesn't always happen with me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. With that, we're gonna move on, as long as nobody has any other questions. And we're gonna move into our discussion about inclusionary housing ordinance. Well,
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. We talked about this. We had a couple of work sessions collaboratively with the Planning Commission, and we've come up with some things. And I asked, I guess last time we talked about that, for everybody to really think about, and with this document, talking about the number of units before it's triggered, what the 15% inclusionary. I made a couple of comments that I've got a couple of nervous actions going on. One is I still believe that this could potentially drive development away if we're asking for this. And really, it would take us a huge project to gain any type of attainable housing within these projects. You know, if we do a 100-unit project, we're looking at 15 units. And I believe that in the county's housing needs assessment, we were talking about 200 attainable housing units over the next several years. And to get there, that means a lot of market rate housing that's probably going to be really outpriced for our community. So I just kind of want to open it up again to everybody and get your thoughts. Do we think this is a good idea to do for our community? Is this something that we want to move forward, or do we want to think about tabling this and not moving forward with it? Floor is open, council.
Well, just one comment on under general requirements here. It talks about the 15% of the number of residential dwelling units, but really for the smaller projects, that really comes out to 20% because you can't have, you know, half a unit or 1.5 units. So that really, honestly, is more of a 20% number. And I realize that there might be an offset of cash or something that would be, you know, maybe equivalent to the 15%, but it seems to me it's a more honest statement to say 20%. Also, I don't have a problem with inclusionary housing, but I think the floor needs to be set higher in terms of the size of the, or a floor set for the size of the project before this is applied.
So
And
you're
I'm not
talking
sure
about
what
Bob,
that would be.
you're talking about with the 5 housing units being the trigger. You feel that it needs to be much higher than that.
Yes, I do. And yeah, well, 15, back to the 15% again. I mean, that's 1.5 units per 10 units. A 20 unit, I mean, it's just still 20%. You'd have to be up to 30 or 40 units at least to make that come out, even to have a significant number of units to make any kind of a dent. So I do agree with you. I don't mind having the requirement on the books, but it has to be applied at a higher level. And I agree with you. I think it would discourage the smaller developers because the margins I really have learned fairly lately are pretty thin on some of these, on a lot of the projects actually.
Okay, Chuck, you were going to say something?
Well, I was just, and I apologize because I don't mean to get off on a tangent. It's just that I think that we especially have some needs that are not being met with our seniors. And I would just promote if we could do some type of a partnership with a nonprofit on perhaps some city land, which there's an item or two that could be used. I would like to see it. And I think it would promote the values that we have here in our town and not take away from anyone else. Because that's kind of the crux of this is I think Jimmy maybe pointed it out last time we were talking about it, or I'm sorry, maybe it was Art, but you have to essentially increase the burden on those who can afford it, right? I mean, so that's the rub. And I'm just saying that this is at least one area where I think we could agree on, and that is if we work with a nonprofit, no one's hurt in this process. If we had a bit of property that we could promote as some type of affordable housing or senior housing.
I see Art chomping at the bit. Art?
Sorry, Mike and Art, you guys are on mute.
Yeah, Art, you unmuted yourself, but you muted it again. There you go. Nope. Click it again. Yeah, there you go. Now talk.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
There.
You know, I guess I'm just, you know, I need to be enlightened because I really don't know if there was any qualifications prior to us discussing this, you know, this inclusion ordinance. So I'm a little confused. What I'm concerned about is I still don't think, from my viewpoint, we've identified who we want to help. Do we want to help the workforce people, or do we want to help the developers? And I don't know what the criteria was before for a developer to come in here and build workforce housing, how many had to be that, what the percent was, or if we had a tax on it. I'm not privy to that. I just wasn't included. I wasn't on the board. So I'm a little confused about this thing here. On one hand, we say, well, 15% of 100 units wouldn't really produce enough units for the workforce labor. On the other hand, we say 15% might discourage developers. So that means with this in place, what I get out of it, the 15%, which would be more like 20, like Bob says, would discourage the small developers, but it would have no negative effect on the larger developers. And with the larger developers, the negative effect would be less workforce housing, if I'm following this correctly. And if I'm not, please correct me. I'm not criticizing anything. I'm looking to be enlightened because it's complicated to me not knowing what we did before.
So
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, the city didn't have any guidance or regulations in for this. We did have an impact fee for development. That was a fee that is instilled with development. You know, as we started bringing in and hearing about market rate housing being interested in our community, is when it kind of triggered me to see if this would work, and I wanted to bring it to council for discussion. You know, this is something new to me as well. It's new to our community.
Right.
And like you said, you know, the balance of market rate for families that are coming up with that make a good living, that have, you know, 6-figure paying jobs, to our workforce in our community that, you know, they're making 20 or 30, 40,000 a year, and they can't find a place to live for it. We have that problem with our officers. We have a problem with our teachers. That's why we're losing our teachers at the school. One, their salary is so low, and then when they can find something up here, their salary won't support that. So this is also an attempt to provide for those types of professionals.
Well, we should, but if you take those two numbers we're talking about, Andrew was kind enough to give it to me a few months ago, so I may be wrong. We're talking about 6 or 7 officers and 15. We're talking about 22 or 23 people.
So you've got volunteers from the fire authority. There's 40 of those, and most of those live out of our county down the hill because they can't find places up here. So
well, wait, you think those people would move up here, the volunteers, just because they're volunteers? I mean, then that really is, that's a separate issue from the people who are actually working and making the $25,000 or $30,000 that you spoke of a minute ago. I think that's 2 different categories that I can't see a volunteer moving up here for that reason. Because what's the life of a volunteer as far as the length of time that they are volunteers? I don't think it's that long. So I can't see those people moving up here. I think that's clouding the issue and giving a false number, to be honest with you. I'm talking about the people that actually earn money, that want to live here and work. And that's the ones where it should be our target, without hurting the market houses as well. I mean, we got to find that mix. I don't think we found that mix with this thing. I'll be honest with you.
All right. Thank you for the comments, Art.
You're welcome.
John Curtis, Jim. Yeah, John.
So let me understand. So 20% would be low income housing, 15, 20. Then the other 80% make up the fees and everything to the developer or whoever owns it. That's where I'm confused.
Yeah, it's on the developer's back. And I think Art quoted it a couple of weeks ago that if we include these workforce or attainable housing at lower costs, that drives the cost of the other units up and basically putting that burden on the new purchaser or renter from those units.
Right.
And
So where's this help then in looking at the whole picture, 100%, then you're going to have a lot of people who can't afford to pay for the other 15 or 20%. That's my concern.
Yeah. And then, this is tough. Jim, you have any comments?
No, I can't seem to figure out either that it seems a fine line of, do we want to help, our workforce housing, or are we scared of running, a developer off that needs to make millions of dollars or something? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a complex issue.
Can I tell you one thing? And I'm really a very glass half full kind of guy, but I think what has brought this to a head, really, I believe there has been wild speculation in the real estate. And I don't ever remember in my life real estate being so in favor. It's something you can't get enough of. And people who maybe shouldn't even be building are building. I don't know that our community has ever had this affliction as bad as long as it's been around as it has right now. And I don't know that it'll stick around forever, but I'm saying right now, most of the cities around us are trying to play that game about providing some kind of workforce housing. And all I was saying early on is there is a bit of low-hanging fruit if we identified a parcel or parcels here in the city and would coordinate with a nonprofit. We could get some senior housing or perhaps some affordable housing or both at no expense to anyone else.
I think that's an avenue we should investigate for sure, Chuck. I don't disagree with you. I would favor the senior housing, but that's because I want to spend a house there.
No, well, we don't have nearly enough, and I'm afraid we're all growing older. So that's something I can see in the future. We're not going to even come close to meeting the needs. Right now, if you need some help as a senior, we send you out of the county. I mean, unless you can get some home-based help, if you're in some type of a smaller assistance, you'll find yourself living over in Jefferson County or one of the surrounding communities. We just can't take care of you here. It's a shame.
And just to know, as you talk about the communities around us, some of them are starting to put in restrictions on percent of housing. I don't know what category that means, any and all, or market or workforce. I don't know, but some of them are starting to look at restrictions because of the overgrowth and what the city can't handle as far as fundamentals as police and firemen and things like that. So I think we've got to do it right and clarify what our exact goals are for which group or how we benefit each group. And I don't know if this addresses that, Mr. Mayor.
Could I make a comment on Chuck's suggestion earlier that we, as a city council, are going to have a meeting about our various land holdings, which are something like 70 of them. I think you mentioned, Chuck. I'm sure a few of them would work for any kind of housing development, big or small. But I think we really need to analyze what we have. And I know that we've been mentioning possibly offering that up to a nonprofit to perhaps make their numbers work in terms of a quality project. But I would submit that perhaps some of this land would be valuable enough that a private developer might be interested in partnering with the city if we offered up the land and became a partner. I think this kind of scenario appeals to me up front here, that we could make a significant difference in terms of numbers of units. And we wouldn't have to necessarily limit it to one site. We might have 2 or 3 appropriate sites. And why wouldn't a developer be able to use all 3? So I would like to, at this point, learn a lot more about what our holdings are and what the possibilities are with private and nonprofit, and also models from other communities around the country, perhaps, that we might follow and work out.
That sounds like an idea as far as I'm concerned, Bob. I agree with you and Chuck.
All right. So I think we're getting to the point with this discussion that we're ready to maybe table this again and have more discussion and talk about numbers. I'm just looking for some direction from council.
I would like to do that.
Yeah, I think tabling would be good.
Yeah, I think tabling.
And follow up with what Bob suggested as far as finding out, what we have, what it's worth, and maybe get a clear direction with that plan. And like Chuck said, and then go forward from there. I think that would be, that would be the foundation of what we want to do.
Okay. Any other comments? Barb, you're on with it. Do you have any comments to make as our representing planner? Barb?
Yep, I just had to figure out how to unmute just a second.
I'll explain it to you.
Technology is sometimes difficult. So, I have thought about this ordinance. I appreciate what Nina has put together, but I'm also in the position where we're the people that sort of have to make this work on the ground with the projects that we know are in the pipeline, as well as those that are in the pipeline. And some of those projects are quite significant. I guess my sense at this point in time, if I look at the numbers and some of the numbers that Jonathan put together, take a step back and realize that the city has a 95% occupancy rate. And so that's across the board. That's just not attainable workforce, et cetera. I think that I guess my gut right now, and I really appreciate listening to this discussion because it's very helpful for me to listen to what you're saying. I'm sort of thinking, given where we are economically, Idaho Springs at this point in time might be better off looking at carrot versus stick. And I think there's some opportunities. So where we are at this point in time, when a developer talks to us or is thinking about what should we do or whatever, obviously many of the applicants or potential applicants understand the need for housing. So I think that no matter if you're a small developer or a big developer, people are aware of that need. And so I think you're right to take some time on this and sort of see what comes out. You've got a couple of big decisions in front of you. You've got 2800 Minor, which is a rezone to R3. So that's been publicized, so I can talk about that. So that's 69 units. You obviously have the school district that has put a number of properties out for bid, and the school district has gotten those properties back. They are supposedly going to make a presentation to the community as a whole in terms of where they are on those bids. So I really like Art and Bob's idea. The fact that you have the community asset of underdeveloped or vacant properties, back to Chuck's point, is worthy of looking at. I mean, I always say know where you are at all times. And if you don't know where you are with something, and I think Mayor Mike talked about this earlier, he said, well, what do we have to offer? Well, Chuck, I think, just pointed out that what you do have to offer is property. And is that property, can it be developed? So that you guys are at a period in time, and I just sort of always marvel at how do I get into these communities again, where you're going through change. And I think the change in Idaho Springs is something that everybody needs to be mindful of. And I do think that housing will continue to be a need to ensure you have a robust economy.
Okay. I'd like to table this for another discussion into the future. I believe we may have to, and Nina, correct me if I'm wrong, Monday night, we may have to postpone or table this till a designated date. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I mean, well, this is the work session, but you guys have it planned for the second reading on the 23rd, right?
Is that the date, the 23rd?
That's right.
So, I mean, you could either, one of two things. You could either just, not, let it go and then it's re-noticed for the second reading, or on the 23rd, say you're continuing it to a date certain, on X date. So it's more on the 23rd. You got to decide, are you either just kind of continue, are you kind of just letting this go and you'll readdress it at some point? Or on the 23rd, are you saying, let's continue this public hearing to, January 20th, a specific date? If that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. So everybody agrees that's what we should do?
Yeah, with a definite plan to explore this other avenue, to get on it.
Okay, thanks, Bob. All right. We have another Lorraine. We're going to go through our 2021 budget. Lorraine, are you still there?
So, Mayor, what we put together, this is more of a narrative. It's just meant to be highlights. We've dealt a lot with the numbers in the 2021 budget. There hasn't been much change from the version that you saw last time we discussed the budget. But the purpose of this summary is to hit on the highlights, get any further direction from council on various items. And then we'll get the final budget to you after this evening. So just wanted to, one of the things that was asked is right at the beginning there, and on the first page, affecting all departments. If there was to be, the draft budget did not have any pay increases. If there was a pay increase, and it was suggested 3%, what that would cost, what that would look like. So that and then also the consumer price index, what that has looked like over the last year, that was also noted as well. So that is one item that we do need some direction specifically from council this evening. And then we can just run through the rest of this. If you have any questions, I can just highlight them. Lorraine is probably just seeing this because she took some time off, and but it basically just highlights the budget draft that we had already submitted to you, and just to try to generate some discussion and get any further direction from council on the budget.
So what I would like to do is talk about the 3% raise for, if council hasn't noticed, I'm not feeling well, and I need to, I just don't think I've been, that's why I've been popping in and out, and I just don't think I can make the rest of the meeting. I'm very sorry. But I did want to talk about the 3% pay increase for our employees. Andy, is this 44,000? Is that including the FICO and everything, insurance and or FICO?
That is just the wages, Mayor. So there is a bit of an incremental cost to required taxes, payroll taxes, things like that, that would go with that. Relatively small. You can see broken out as the increase in some of the, health insurance, but that is just based on wages. And most of it would come from the general fund. And then, of course, we have some of our staff who are assigned to our enterprise fund, and that's the $8,500 number.
Thoughts, council?
If I could comment, it seems to me that when we had talked about this once or even twice before, that the council was generally actually quite strongly in favor of the 3%.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes,
I mean,
Bob.
it just shows that we care and that how hard they worked, and they, I just think it's a positive thing to do for the employees.
I agree.
And when we talked about this early on, I think we were all kind of scratching our head. We didn't know what was going to happen through June, July, and August. And then when we got our sales tax report back, of course, we scratched our hands again and said, wait a minute, this isn't as bad as we was expecting it to be. So I'm fully in support. I think that we've given 4% raises over the past few years. But I think that us sucking it up as a city and paying, just like Art said, showing them that we value them and we're willing to go ahead no matter what circumstances we're in. We're very fortunate, and I'll knock on wood that we're not going to have to shut down again, but we haven't had to lay off any employees or furloughed anybody. So that's a huge factor right there. So I'm all in favor. Of course, this will have to be voted on a regular meeting, but I am all in favor for the increase for the RO.
Agreed.
Except Andy. I try to be joking even when I'm not feeling well. So, all right, really, I hate to go, Council. Bob, do you mind taking over for me for the rest of the meeting?
No, Mike, I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
You take care, Mike.
All right, thanks everybody, and I'll
Take
see
care.
you. Take care,
You
man.
better, Mike.
Take care, Mike.
Good night, sir.
Take care, Mike.
All right. Well, in this august position, I'm just going to turn right around and say, Andy,
Sure.
what? I
Okay.
really don't know where to go with this. I think I could muddle my way through, but you probably have a much better handle on it.
Sure. Well, I won't go through every particular item, but if you have questions, feel free to ask, or if you have other thoughts, let me know. But again, affecting all departments, employee health insurance premiums will increase 5.5%. That's relatively modest increase based upon historical increases. That's a good thing. We do participate in a community pool statewide, and that does help as a smaller city for us to get the benefits of being in a larger pool where you can share some of those costs. So we're fortunate there that there won't be a real big increase. No increase in dental and life insurance, which are much smaller premiums, but that's still a good thing. Early this year when the pandemic hit, we all pulled together and put a lot of things on hold. We made some cuts and we just tried to find savings anywhere we could. And a couple things that we did put on hold or cut was the proposed annual bonus for employees, the annual holiday party, and the passes to the recreation center. So those were all ended in March or early April when we made those cuts. And it is in the proposed budget, we're suggesting that those be restored for 21. Again, it's very hard to budget in this current environment. And what I would suggest is that we do budget these things as normal. If we need to put the brakes on it again, if we get into a lockdown, if we find the revenues are falling short, we can always, again, make some cuts. We can postpone projects. But, we do have to continue our day-to-day operations. We do have to continue doing capital projects as we are able. Some things are easier to postpone than others. So that would be my suggestion, is that we go ahead and try to restore those for next year, with the idea that we are going to see some improvement as the year goes on next year. One little bright spot, I like to highlight the bright spots. We've had a lot of cuts, a lot of things been put on hold and postponed. The investment that the city made and council approved in our new voice over internet protocol phone system has given us a lot better phone system citywide at all of our locations. But also we're seeing approximately 65% savings there. So we've been able to cut that line item in every department's budget. So, and that adds up. So that is a bright spot.
Andy, do you have a general dollar number to put on that percentage? That's pretty impressive.
That's a good question. I don't, but I could get that, Bob.
Yeah, well, next week or two, no hurry. But that's
Okay.
exciting. Good.
All righty. And then just on the general fund, or the revenue, sales tax proposed for 2021 is at the same level as the actual for 2019. So pretty conservative. A little bit above the estimated actual for 2020, what we're projecting. That's that column that Lorraine referred to earlier, that we try to estimate where we will be at the end of 2020. And we do expect our sales tax at the end of this year. Again, it's been up and down, but we are expecting about 7.5% lower than the actual for 2019. So sales tax is down a little bit, no question. Total revenue proposed for 2021, so it's not just sales tax, but all revenue in the general fund, is at the same level as estimated actual for 2020. So again, pretty much holding the line as much as we can on the budget. Proposed expenditures for 2021, same level as adopted for 2020, and estimated expenditures for 2020 are expected to be 3.5% higher than the actual for 2019. So again, trying to hold the line as much as we can. Any questions so far? Or Lorraine, do you have any other comments? I know, again, you know the budget. We've been working together on it, but you may not have seen this until just now.
No, I saw it earlier today, and I thought it was a great synopsis of the highlights of the budget.
Okay. Well, I'll just keep plugging along unless there are any questions or comments. Streets Department is pretty much status quo. John has made some significant cuts there while still providing the services. So no big changes in that budget other than reducing some of the line items and the costs. Administration budget, we are budgeted to fill the vacant community development planner and finance officer positions in 2021 and to end contracted services for these positions. I say budgeted because that is a decision of council. Do we want to do something different in those areas? Do we want to structure it somehow different? But the bottom line is we are budgeted for that, just like we were this year. And instead of having those positions filled with individuals, employees, for most of the year, we had contracted services for planning and for finance. And we could do that again for all or part of next year, but we are budgeted for those positions. Earlier this year, as council knows, we did take a crack at filling the community development planner position, and we got to second interviews, and ultimately the final three, the hiring panel just decided that it wasn't quite we hadn't found quite the right person for that position. So I think our plan right now, subject to other direction from council, is to re-advertise for the planner after the first of the year. And hopefully things will get a little more normalcy, a little more predictability. My guess is that we may receive more applications and more qualified candidates if people aren't quite so worried about either losing their jobs or moving to a new job. I think a lot of folks are just trying to stay put if they have a job at this time. And So we can have more discussion on those, but those positions are budgeted for. I think we've been covered quite well with our with Lorraine and Barb and Mike, Barb's colleague. So I'm very thankful that we've been able to find contracted staff who are contracted personnel who know smaller cities, know mountain communities, and have fit in quite well. So community promotion, as you know, we are proposed to restore the budget for 2021 for Independence Day festivities. That includes fireworks and the bands. Good news there is that we had already paid the 50% deposit on the fireworks show for this year. That did not happen. So that amount that's already been spent, already been applied for this year out of this year's budget, will be applied for next year. So we'll only have to pay half the other 50% for the fireworks display next year. So we'll have some savings in that line item for next year. Let's see, police department. The big item there, of course, is each year under an agreement with the sheriff's office, they provide dispatch services. Each year for 5 years, the cost for dispatch services goes up significantly. It'll go up by another 40,000 to about 182,000 next year. And by the 5th year, 2 years from now, it will be up to about 250,000 a year for dispatch services. That's a huge line item in the police operating budget. Parks Department, we had talked about that this year, and like so many things that were put on hold. We had budgeted this year for some contracted landscaping services to assist our public works with landscaping needs in our parks particularly. And we're proposing that be put in again for next year to have a relatively small contract to provide some assistance with landscaping in our parks. Any questions so far?
Sounded good, Andy. Thank you.
Okay. And again, Lorraine, if you have anything, feel free to chime in. 1% street sales tax. Again, holding the line as much as we can. The estimated fund balance is about $1.5 million in that 1% street tax. No new projects are proposed other than maintenance. And we might want to, as things hopefully get more back to normal, think about if there are some other smaller streets projects that we would like to do moving forward. But right now, we're not proposing that for next year. In the ramp fund, that was the fund for reconstructing Colorado Boulevard. We have an estimated fund balance of about $700,000. And no new projects are proposed there other than maintenance of Colorado Boulevard. And that was by design to have at least $500,000. Here we have a little bit more to have as a maintenance fund and to be able to grow that fund if interest rates increase a little bit to do maintenance and maybe overlays in the future on Colorado Boulevard. Sales tax improvement fund, capital projects. Again, this is where out of our 4% sales tax, this is where the other 1% goes into this fund. Again, same, trying to hold the line on expenditures and revenue. Or revenue is projected to be about, pretty stable compared to 19. Expenditures, again, these projects can be postponed if we need to, but we need to keep moving on some of these. We did put in engineering for the downtown parking deck, the design work. That's still coming together as far as the funding for that. As you know, there's a group of downtown business and property owners that are looking to form a business improvement district or something similar that would provide part of the funding for that parking deck. CDOT has also proposed funding as well, offered funding as well. And then future revenues from that parking deck could also provide the funding for it. So the idea is this would not be it would be expended out of the sales tax improvement fund, but it would not come out of general tax dollars for the most part. This would be funded by several different sources: CDOT, future revenues from the parking revenue, and from downtown property owners and businesses. If the property owners would need to vote to do a special assessment on their properties. This was similar to what was done back when the downtown improvements were done, what, 30 years ago, Bob?
Yeah, about 20.
About 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So that group is actively meeting, and it would have to be an election in the fall of just those property owners, as I understand it, because of the Tabor implications. So there's more to come on that. Council will be hearing more about that. But we did want to budget this because, assuming that does all come together, those funding sources, we would like to the plan would be to move forward with the design for the 2-level parking deck behind Tommyknockers. Construction of a new public works facility. We have submitted, as council knows, a $1 million grant request to DOLA to help fund the construction of this new facility. We did meet with Clay Brown with DOLA a week or two ago to talk about our request. Funding is reduced because of the energy, the impact on reduced revenue coming from energy production here in the state. So it's going to be extremely competitive. It is definitely not assured that we will get any of the requests will be fully funded. So I think the question comes here is, if we don't get the full $1 million, what does it look like if we only get a $750,000 grant? Are we able to fund the remainder? And that is something that I want to have more discussion with Lorraine about, take a closer look at that. So I can, the hearing is not until January, so we still need to budget this. But before we pull the trigger on that project, I want to make sure that that we're comfortable and council's comfortable with the share that the city would need to pay for this project. And so if we're not, we could always postpone it, but we'll have to see what kind of funding we can get from DOLA. We do, again, some of these projects, a number of them are carryovers from this year that just didn't happen because of the pandemic and the economy. Park improvements includes $100,000 for the renovation of the Citizens Park restrooms, which is badly needed, and up to $900,000 in trail construction at Virginia Canyon Mountain Park, subject to grant awards. So we do have several grant applications that have been submitted, 2 that have been submitted to Colorado Parks and Wildlife, 1 that's been submitted to GOCO, Greater Outdoors Colorado. We're waiting to hear back on those grants. Just how much we can do with trail construction is dependent on those grants. We do have the $400,000 gondola fee advance that's been that the Argo team is committed for trail construction. So again, before any trail construction is done, we will circle back with council to talk about what's happened with the grants, whether we want to use some of that advance from the Argo gondola fees. So there will be more discussion about that. But if we really do well on the grants and we want to use the gondola fee advance, we could be building a significant portion of the trail infrastructure up there in Virginia Canyon Mountain Park. We do want to try to get some of those trails built. I mean, I would say that is a goal to at least get some of the trails in there for hiking and recreation. The police department equipment includes $22,000 approximately for replacement of in-vehicle laptop computers that will be coming out of warranty. So that is something we really do need to get done. It's not on the list here, but as we're working with our consultant on recruitment of a new chief of police, our current chief has been very modest and very frugal with his own needs. he has driven old police vehicles literally until they don't run anymore. And after talking with the chief and our consultant, we do think it would make sense to budget one replacement vehicle for next year that could be designated for the new police chief, or if that chief so desires, that could be assigned to one of the officers, and then that the police chief could take one of the vehicles that has more mileage on it. That could be sorted out. But the chief, we did not replace any vehicles this year. The chief's done a great job in getting newer vehicles in the hands of the officers on the front lines. But we do recommend that we add a vehicle replacement for next year. That'd be about $45,000, everything included. Streetscape mall improvements, again, another item that was deferred from this year's budget, $65,000 for a downtown improvements master plan, and $30,000 for shared trash enclosures in the city parking lots. That is one of the items that the Downtown Improvements Work Group has been meeting every week. That's in addition to the parking deck. They're also talking about shared trash enclosures in the big parking lots. So we would like to, once the CDOT gets done, we would like to, there's a lot of support for that with the businesses downtown. I'd like to go ahead and get that, get those installed. Again, more items that were postponed from this year: City Hall improvements, including the restrooms reconstruction here on the main level of City Hall, and then restoring the windows on the main level here. You may remember a year or two ago, we replaced the windows on the lower level that was badly needed. Some of those windows were just leaking like a sieve. And then these windows would be the main level where council chambers is, which are much more ornate and be much more involved to restore those windows. And then last item, sites and facilities improvements, $250,000 for the train restoration. Again, that would be dependent on getting a grant from History Colorado. And we're considering applying in March for a grant, and $60,000 for hose house number 2 restoration. And that includes a $25,000 bequest to the Historical Society that the Historical Society has in hand. So we are starting on design with the Haynes for that restoration project. And we would like to have construction occur in 2021.
Andy, if I could touch on that for a minute.
Sure.
You know, no one here had a thing to do with this, but when a member of the public stepped forward, and this recently happened 2 years ago, and they say, we want to donate $10,000 to the cemetery. From the Historical Society goes and strong arms them and says, but why don't you put it towards benches? I mean, that's just where that's where they want it to go. It's called designated funds, and that's where it's put. This $25,000, if it's the individual that I believe had donated it, initially had talked about donating it for hose house number 2, but some time ago had donated the money. This is the same money. He had donated the money towards other things that would benefit the city over at the museum. And I would say, I don't speak to the Historical Society, of course, I'm not even on the museum committee, but I think that this gentleman had changed his mind. But on a brighter note, I would say that the Historical Society, I know for a fact, has participated in getting seed money for every historical project, including the main hose house. I mean, I'm sure that they would be participating, but I feel really bad that it doesn't look like the city has been informed of the wishes of this donor. And the only thing I would point to, just all honesty, I think perhaps some of that vacuum was left we lost a director of the museum at a rather short time at the beginning of this COVID. And, you know, it had remained closed for a number of months, and it had just recently opened on Friday the 13th. I won't say that was perhaps the best idea, but I just wanted to bring you up to speed, and I'm going to apologize in advance if there has been additional money donated, but I'm suspecting that that's the same amount that was originally kicked around by the donor.
So are you saying, Chuck, that $25,000 may not be available for the hose house renovation?
No, sir, I believe so. I do believe that it was that donor, and I want everybody here to know that donor's decision only. No one coerced one way or the other to spend it on other things. Similarly, when we had my brother and sister come forward to donate $10,000 to the cemetery, no one tried to strong arm them and change their mind about where that went. I just want to apologize to everyone here that that was not conveyed to the city in a timely fashion many months ago. But I see it here in the notes, and I suspect that that's the same 25,000 that there has not been two.
Okay. All righty, and the last section is water and wastewater enterprise funds. For revenue, a 5% rate increase is proposed for 2021. The rate study that we did in 2019 recommended 9%, but as we did a couple of years ago with some of the larger increases that we've had, we're recommending that we do a relatively more modest increase of 5% for both water and for sewer this year for 2021. We are budgeted to fill the vacant water wastewater superintendent in 2021. Again, we've had a contracted operator responsible in charge, ORC, for most of this year. And we could certainly have discussion about continuing that arrangement. John Bordoni has been the has overseen both public works and then water and wastewater, and then the ORC has been covered by Ramey Environmental. So that again has worked. But we are budgeted to fill that position if we choose to do so. Of course, if we don't, we have the money there for contracted services to continue. We are proposing, this was recommended by our water attorney, is that we do or we update our existing water study, the city's water study that was done a while back. And it's estimated that'll cost about $25,000. And let's see, what else? John, if you want to talk about anything in particular, you let me know. But some of these things were deferred from last year or from this year, and want to do it for next year. We've got some repairs to the Matty Dam, Chicago Creek waterline repairs. Wastewater, again, 5% rate increase proposed. The big CIP project, of course, is Project 2 for the improvements at the wastewater treatment plant, funded by the DOLA grant and the $3 million Powered Water Authority loan. So those are the highlights. Any other thoughts or further direction from council at this time?
I just have a question. A year ago, didn't we put in rate increases for water and sewer? I was just on the city council, just starting, Jimmy and I and Chuck, so I'm not sure I'm clear on that, but I thought we had approved, the city council approved a rate increase for the water and sewer in 2020.
We did. We do any rate increases that council approves are done each year. So they were done.
Okay, so we want to put 5% in the water fund, item 52, and the revenue 5% in addition to what we did at the beginning. And what was that rate increase percent? Do you remember? I thought it was large. If I remember.
That was 9%, I think, initially.
That's right. It was 9 for water and 8 for sewer. That's right.
Yeah.
and we want to go 5 over each of those again.
You know, I would like to add here that what we're doing is still, even now, playing catch up after this one from years of falling behind. And being an enterprise fund, we don't have a choice. We really do not have a choice.
I know, I understand that, but you know, the people are paying for poor management of the city prior to, you know, prior, like you said, for the years. That's a hard pill to swallow.
I agree.
One would think hopefully we might be able to cut some expenditures that would account instead of for a raise. I mean, that's something I would look at. I just find it, it's just a hard pill to swallow because you know, we got a lot of pushback, I thought, last year from the residents. At least I heard a lot of pushback. Didn't do any good, but I just think that's, you know, with what's going on, that's not, it may not sound like a big raise, but over and above what we did last year. So that's all I want to say. One other thing on a lighter note, I'd like to say, if I may, when it comes to the sales income, you know, sales tax income, I noticed last week, Friday and previous winter on Fridays when Georgetown, the I-70 closes down I-70 West at Georgetown, our business booms. So I was thinking maybe we should close down I-70 every Friday and Saturday morning and we get some additional sales tax. But I'm from Chicago and that's how we do things. So that was just on a lighter note, guys.
But
Sorry.
we appreciate creative thinking very much.
Yes, we do.
Okay, well,
That's called a captive audience.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. All right. Thank you guys for listening to me on both accounts.
No problem. Okay, Andy, did you have anything else, or Lorraine, anything to add to what Andy had?
No, not at this time, sir.
Okay, just a couple of comments, and Lorraine, you might back me up or not on this, but I know a number of other city, or I should say individuals who have been at the health department, Tri-County Health through the years with me that are involved in other city councils. And one Marin out on the plains in Colorado. And I can tell you, Idaho Springs financially is doing more than head and shoulders better than every one of these other cities. And Lorraine, I don't know if you're seeing the same thing, but we are in a sweet spot here, relatively speaking.
You are. You've got a specialty market that seems to keep up even when these other markets are depressed.
Yeah, some of these other towns are hemorrhaging employees, money. It's awful. And I can't, I just talked to one today from under Bennett, and it's a different world out there. So we are really doing very well. I want to thank Chuck for bringing up about the 25,000, because that's why we do these budgets incrementally, I think, to sort these things out. And so I appreciate that very much. And I don't have anything else. If anybody else does, I guess we all want to put in a good word for Mike, Mayor Mike tonight. And I know he told me earlier he was feeling pretty rough. And so I was quite frankly surprised to see him tonight and to see how good he looked there, at least for a while.
You know, early on, yeah, I never would have known sick.
Yeah, I wouldn't have.
Yeah. Well, Bob, thank you for taking over, sir.
Okay, all right, Jim. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Andy.
All right. Well, with that, anything else, Andy, that you can think of, or John, for that matter? Jonathan?
I think that's it.
Okay. All right. Well, good night, everybody. Stay
Good night.
healthy, for heaven's sakes, and
Night.
we'll keep our fingers crossed for Mike. Take care. Thank you.
Take care now.